Okay, welcome to Family Chatter. This is our fourth week that we have been talking about how everybody's caring for their aging parents and different situations like that. Today I have Kim Simmons, who is with me. I am excited to have her with me today. She is a business manager. She has two teen children, a boy and a girl, and I have seen them. And then you are a clergy's wife. That sounds like you got a lot going on there.
Yes.
So welcome today, Kim. We're just going to have, at Family Chatter, our little slogan is real conversations with real people about real situations. So, anything goes here. We can talk about it all.
Beautiful.
So I'm going to be doing, I'm interested in like cultural belief systems and, what everybody believes and what everybody was taught as it relates to their aging family. And so I'll let you just, say hi to everybody and tell everybody about your background as far as your culture and all of that. So I'm going to let you get started here.
Okay. Well, I am originally from Southern California. My father, I was born on an Indian reservation. My father is Native American. He died when I was very young. My mother is Dutch and Irish, but has always lived on the reservation. So I moved to Washington State when I was a very young girl. And so I predominantly lived in Washington State, between Eastern Washington and Seattle. Then I, as a young adult, I moved out to Miami for my company moved me out there. And so as an adult, I predominantly have lived on the East Coast.
Okay. So you've lived like away from the reservation, but from our conversations, your core beliefs are still in line basically with the way that you were raised. Is that a fair statement?
Right. So my family still lives on the reservation. 95% of my family.
Oh.
So the only person who doesn't in my immediate family is my brother.
Okay.
And my family, of course, but everybody lives on the reservation. So
okay.
What that does is, you have to care about your culture.
Right.
And, there's a lot of things, of course, that frustrate me because, I left the reservation young and, unfortunately, there's not a lot of ways that you can help because they're very isolated, depending on which reservation you're talking about and which one has money and which one doesn't. It can be a very isolating situation for a lot of people who live on the reservation. And
so let me just step back just a little bit here. And first I want to know about when you were raised and your dad was Native American, and you were taught all of those customs and probably those beliefs were embedded in you. What is the belief system with caring for elders? Like, what are you all expected to do?
So, of course, the elders, they run families, and, your elders is who you look to. And, in the Native American culture, the elders are always taken care of by the family. And they are considered, if you think about it, if you're an elder in a tribe, you're considered in the hierarchy of the tribe, you're in the highest part of the tribe. Okay. So if you're an elder in the church, similarly to the church, if you're an elder in the church, you have a seniority position in the church. Well, similarly to in your tribe, if the elders in your tribe are the elderly people in your family. And so the elders are taken care of in your home, and they, which is a very fortunate thing. People are to care for their their aging
Right.
parents, their aging aunt and uncles. Unfortunately, on the reservation, is healthcare isn't predominantly it's not readily available. One,
Okay.
two. Sometimes people think that they can care for people for things that they can't, and that medical care needs to be sought when it's not. And so
So can I stop you right there?
Sure.
So one, medical care is not readily available. I'm sure it's no fault of your family's own. But is it more of a belief system that, do you all believe in more holistic like remedies, or why is it that, I know it's not available right there, but you could go, and I don't know how far you would have to travel to get that type of care, but is it just a belief system that you can be healed holistically?
Well, there are tribes. Okay, so every tribe is different. All right, every band of Indians is different. There are tribes that believe in very holistic healing, and they have their shamans or their medical, their people in the tribe that do that healing, and that is very prominent in many tribes. Okay, and in some tribes, in some bands of Indians and mission Indians, there may be certain family groups that do adhere to that. There are parts of my family that do adhere to that. And then there's parts of my family that don't. Then there are parts that adhere to some of that and not all of it.
Okay.
So for example, my mother is not Native, but lives on the reservation. She doesn't adhere to that. She just adheres to, I'm just not going to go to the doctor.
So why won't she go to the doctor?
Well, I think it's I think that it's what you don't know won't hurt you, and I think that I think is, the fear of finding out what might be wrong, and also they don't treat you very nice when they know you're coming from the reservation. They have historically treated my mother horrible, and I've had to get involved in many from afar, in many different situations. They've thrown things at her. They've screamed at her when she's not even coherent. Just awful, awful things because of this, the different diseases that run rampant on the reservations. There are hospitals on reservations that are not reservation ran. They are for-profit hospitals that are ran by other agencies, that they come onto the reservation because they feel like that may be a place in need, but really they're for-profit hospitals. But they come there, and the care is subpar. They send their doctors in training that need training. They send them there. So the doctors, you don't get really well-trained doctors at these hospitals. They're small. They have very little beds. And if you have any major medical issue, they instantly ship you off to a major hospital.
Okay.
But they know that if you are in a hospital, if you're a Native in that hospital, you're going to have diabetes, high blood pressure, you're going to be obese, or you're going to have alcoholism, you're going to have substance abuse. They know that these are all issues that are inherent to reservation life, right? So because of what? Poverty.
So this could really be a whole segment. We could just go in a lot of different directions with what's going on with the Indian population and how they're being treated. But if we specifically look at the elderly, so this is you said some of this, but I'm gonna quiz you here on something that I looked up, so you didn't know, for our viewers in advance. But it says, I want you to answer this, true or false. Historically, this population is more likely to be uninsured and to suffer from greater morbidities, poorer health outcomes, and quality of life, and lower life expectancies compared to all the United States aging population. Would you say that's true?
That is true. That is true.
So I know when we talked, you talked about that the majority of the elderly, if I just think about it, if they're not going, if your parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles don't believe in the medical system because they're being mistreated, they don't have access to quality care. And if you go through a lifetime of that, by the time you reach the age of 65 or older, you are bound to suffer from something. So given that, I would imagine that there are a lot of ill people on the tribe, in the tribe and on the reservation. And so some of you don't live on that reservation and live, a distance. Some have stayed, a lot have stayed, but it seems like that could be a lot, because if they're not going to the hospital, someone's caring for them.
Right. So it's up to, it's up to their children or their family. They have to be taken care of. And that is the responsibility of family to do. Right. So. And that is the responsibility that everybody happily has to take upon themselves and do so, because we truly believe that what you do unto others will have to come back onto you, because you one day most likely might be in that same spot. So
right.
You want to be taken care of. And so there are many cases to where, family, they don't let you know that they're sick, and they won't let you know until they actually have hospice at their house.
So is that because they don't want to burden the family, or is it just that's a custom?
That is partially both. Not burdening the family is part of the custom. So recently I had an uncle, which is my only living male, my father's only living brother left. He was only 72 years old, and he had been dying for the last 10 years. And he knew that he was going to
die for the last 10 years.
Yes, he had a disease that was going to be terminal, and he knew it. And he knew that that he was going to die eventually. And he told nobody. He didn't even tell his wife.
Oh.
And the idea that, what he had told his children, because he had adopted many children on the reservation down in where I was born in Southern California. They have him and his wife ran a orphanage, and so they have plenty of adopted children to help. And he knew that. They all live right there with him. He didn't want anybody to come and see him just because he was sick. And they did not know that he was sick until he entered the hospital, and the hospital called them and said they were sending him home on hospice.
Wow.
And when I asked his oldest son why, and he said he cut his hair, which natives don't cut their hair unless something's wrong. His hair was very, very long, and he always kept it braided. And we knew when he cut his hair, something was wrong. And that's when he told us, I'm dying. And that's when his whole family came and spent the last 48 hours with him. But he had cirrhosis of the liver from years of alcoholism, that he had been sober for 20 years, but it didn't change the damage that had been done. It was just,
right.
It was just a slow death.
Right.
And he didn't want anybody to take care of him. He didn't want anybody to come and see him because he was dying. He didn't want anybody to, no fanfare. He didn't want a funeral. He didn't want any of that. And my stepfather, who comes from a completely different tribe, died almost a year to a day prior to him, and was exactly the same way.
Oh my.
But I knew he was sick. He told my mother he was going to die next year, the year later. when he knew actually it was coming sooner. And the only thing that he had is he was a veteran, so he wanted a military burial.
Okay.
But he wanted the burial so quick that nobody would have time to spend money to get there, which is very, frustrating for people like me, because he literally died on a Thursday and was buried and in the ground by Saturday.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But that is the part, there's a very interesting part of the male part of the Native American community, which is a mystery to a lot of the females. They never ask about your female daughters. They only ask about the males. And they, when they speak to you, they speak a lot to you about your husband, and they never want to seem like they're weak.
Well, I can kind of understand that, the man is supposed to be the man, and, your culture says that they're supposed to be strong, and, they have these major positions within their tribes. And so, I can kind of understand that. But I think when you have to couple that with not having the medical attention you need, then it's cause for disaster. And I know that you mentioned some of the things, I think I've just learned about things that kind of run rampant on the reservations, and that is alcoholism. And you mentioned that, he had been 20 years sober, no drinking, that sort of thing, but it had already done the damage. So I can imagine that there are a number of older people now who are experiencing the effects of that. Now,
yeah.
I wanted to ask about your mother, because I know that, well, one, you mentioned it before, she is not Native American.
Nope.
But she married into it and believed in it and lived it for
her whole life.
Her whole life. So
Yeah.
that's how she is. But I know that recently she had an illness and you had to go there.
It all stems from the same thing. She may not be Native, but culturally, she still lives in the same environment.
Right.
And so when you live in the same environment, you become your environment. And for she's suffered from alcoholism her whole life.
Right.
And she isn't drinking for the last 10, 15 years, but she suffers still from the effects of that. And she had another episode where, because of her bad liver, and her taking too many aspirin and too many Motrin, which she's not supposed to take, and because she had back surgery.
Okay.
And she went to a hospital that didn't know what they were doing on the reservation until I called and said, well, she doesn't know who she is because her ammonia levels are too high. Did you check her ammonia levels? Oh, we didn't do that. She's bleeding somewhere. We just know that. Well, I can tell you where she's bleeding from. Then immediately they hang up the phone and they transfer her to another hospital where they know what to do.
Okay, wait a minute. Now, you're in Georgia.
In Montana.
And she's in Montana. And so it sounds like you are managing care from afar.
Have to. Yeah. Every time she goes to the hospital, I have to be on the phone with the emergency room, because on top of it, the nurses are so nasty. They're nasty to her. They shoved an NG tube down her nose and made her nose bleed so bad. And my sister's there. Now my sister is there. Okay. But I have to manage her too, because she's lived her life on the reservation.
Oh,
So
wow. So you are probably, I'm going to say that you're a progressive
yes,
Native American. And so you believe in, all the medicine, the modern medicine and
yeah,
hospitals and doctors. You have
and
two
science.
children and, you take them when they need to go.
Yeah, I believe in complete science.
Yeah.
I believe in science.
So how does that fare when you know that your mother, your sister, I think you have another uncle that's
I have
still
a whole family. Yeah, a whole side of another family that don't necessarily do what they need to do when they need to do it until
So are you going to, you have that progressive mindset. You still hang on to those customs and beliefs, but you know that medicine can help. So
right.
what is the plan?
Well,
What is the plan when your family one by one starts to deteriorate as they get older?
well, there's only about 4 of them that are older than me. Well,
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them older than me. So, and 2 of them have another side of the family that will help
Okay.
them. I'm currently worried about my husband's mother. She's the most in need of most immediate care. And my
So let's talk about that, because I know that your mother, she recently had an episode. You had to go to Montana and you were managing care from afar, but you ended up going to Montana to help, maybe shore things up. But while you were gone doing that, what was your husband, Reggie, doing?
he had to go to South Carolina because his mom, she has early onset dementia, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer again. So she's 82 years old. And so he had to go to South Carolina because she was getting the results, whether the cancer had left the breast. And so he was there over the Thanksgiving holiday because we were getting those results before Thanksgiving. So,
Okay.
and
So I mean, I was taking this little quiz today on caregiving, and one of the big things that they mention, which I always mention too, is planning and, lining up your resources. So you have, a set of parents
right.
that are kind of having medical challenges at the same time. And so, when my father started having his challenges, we had to kind of team up and support. And then we eventually had to offer my parents to come and live with us so we could team up even better and just keep tabs on their needs. So do you have a plan like that? Because you have 2 that you're dealing with.
Right. Well, that's a very good point. And we have read your book and we really appreciate your book.
Oh, thank you.
But also, Reggie has 2 other brothers.
Okay.
Who are in the area. They're both in Charlotte. And they right now are taking turns at going to their mother through this process of her having surgery and handling the breast cancer. She's having this surgery with some Duke physicians at the Duke that are part of the Duke Cancer Center. So we want to keep her in that area for that, because her first episode with breast cancer happened at Duke too. So it was a very good experience. And so then we know once this is handled, she is eventually moving her way towards living with one of us.
Okay.
We have had several quotes on getting our basement transformed for her. And so we're in the process of getting either that done or moving to a place where a basement's already finished or has an area that will be helpful for her, an area for her. We know that her memory is declining more each day. So that's something in the works that all the brothers are working on handling. While all I can do from my perspective is to make sure that he can have the space to do that while I'll take care of our family. My kids are managed.
Right.
So I manage them so he doesn't have to worry about them, and he can manage that. And when and if if she moves here, then hopefully we'll be able to keep her here. I mean, she really is. She's lived in the same house for 55 years. It's going to be really hard to make her move from that town that she has been in for 80 years. So they're going to have a fight on their hands with
Right.
that.
So I know you mentioned also that, for now, your mother, she's stabilized as much as she can be. There is a support system, but still that support system might need a little bit of monitoring. So when it comes to that point of, okay, I really need to now step in and consider moving her, do you think you're going to have a fight on your hands too?
I won't have a fight on my hands with her.
Okay.
Because she knows who the person is that's always taken really good care of her when it comes to managing things that are best for her. So she has lived with me before.
Okay, so she trusts your judgment and trusts what you're going to have to do for her,
Right.
And I know that you're not jumping to do that now.
I don't want to move her now because she feels very safe where she's at, and and she lives in a very beautiful place, and her neighbor actually is an RN, and doesn't work in the emergency room at the hospital that I'm speaking about. She works in the labor and delivery area, but I had a long conversation with her because she loves my mother. My mother watches her kids on occasion, so I've enlisted her help. My sister and my uncle are both there.
Okay.
So I've had a conversation with all my siblings because I do have a brother in Nevada, and my mother is 75 and she'll be 76 this year, and I'm praying that if she continues on this path that the doctor has her on, that she'll remain healthy.
Okay.
And but yes, she will definitely have to come if she declines. And
Wow.
she already agreed with me.
Okay.
She agreed with me, and she said to me, Kimmy, she said, I know where I have to go if it gets to that. But the unfortunate part about my mother is that, she's very independent, and she has good wits about herself, and she cleans her house every day. She drives to the grocery store. She's very independent still, and so she doesn't see that she needs help yet.
Right, but you're not alone there. A lot of people that are our age are dealing with, or their parents they still have some wits about them,
Right.
and they're very smart and acute and just, keen on what's going on, but they might need a little bit of supervision. And I don't think that comes easy. My mother, she's very sharp, and she knows what she wants. And sometimes, we try to discourage her from certain things, but she knows what she wants and she's feisty. So it's like, I think I'm going to back down and let mommy have what she wants.
Right.
So, it's, you're just not alone when it comes to, seeing maybe a little bit beyond what they're looking at right now and able to see.
Right.
And just to know, some of the things that you might need to step in on. So that's not an easy thing. But I tell you what, after talking to you, I am more concerned now with the Native American elderly community after speaking with you, because there is just such a great need. And at this point, the elders at this point are there's nothing you can do to convince them of healthcare and those types of things. And it's there's nothing you can do. But I'm wondering, if it's being addressed with the younger generation that are growing up still on the reservation. It is.
It is, because the kids are going to school off the reservations now.
Okay.
So they're going to school off the reservations, social media. They have more access to technology. So with iPhones and with the internet, kids are exposed to stuff that their elders weren't.
Okay.
So it's made a huge impact on what they see and what they believe, which to elders, to some of the elders, they don't like that because they feel like, oh, it's making their mind, it's destroying their minds. But
well, there is some truth to that. There is that social media will drive you crazy, and
really will. It really will. But just like church on the reservation or religion on the reservation, there are varying degrees of what people believe, on what church should be. There are parts of my family that worship what God created, and then there are parts of my family that worship God. So they're just varying degrees depending on where you go. If you go to the Seminole tribe in South Florida, where they're very wealthy, okay, it's a very wealthy tribe.
Okay.
They have their own medical clinics. They actually have their own schools where they have their own nurses and their own doctors and their own police department. So they still have, they still speak their own language. So it's much different than if you go to the smaller tribes throughout the nation. There are some tribes that are so, and it's once again, here we go with these different layers.
Right.
It's very socioeconomical with tribes as well. If you're an unregistered tribe, forget it. You don't have running water.
Wow.
So this country, if I were to take you to some places, when I was a kid, I remember all the trailers that I used to drive by on the reservation that is now that is the reservation that I came from.
Right.
It's much better now because they have a casino and a golf course.
Okay.
So, because it became a federally recognized tribe. But back in the day, it wasn't. It is now. And so, but guess what? It's desert. They do not have city water. They don't have city garbage. They have none of that. They don't have a post office. They have none of that.
I remember a few weeks ago, and we were going to talk, and you're like, you can forget it. I won't have any internet, so we can't do.
That's in Montana. Yeah.
That's like unheard of. Like, how do you not have access to technology?
Well, in Montana, they do have internet. Okay, they do in Ronan. They do, but it's all by satellite. So everybody has
super slow.
Yeah, so they all have satellite dishes on their houses, and they all get their TV by antenna in satellite.
I haven't seen an antenna in years.
It was great for my kids because they didn't get watch a lot of TV. They rode four-wheelers during the day in the snow. They hung out with the neighbor kids. They played this virtual reality thing, and they watched the foxes and the animals and the cows and the dogs. They got to be just like regular kids without anything.
That is good. So let me ask, this is my last question. I really could go on and on. I'm learning so much. But what advice would you give without offending the Native American communities? What advice would you give for those that are still in it and wanting to come up with a better way and support their elders? Do you have any advice you would leave us with today?
Well, first of all, it's very hard if you're on the outside because you don't want to offend anyone on the inside, because it's hard. They will always tell you don't know what we go through.
Right.
True. Because you may live in a completely different environment, if you know what I mean, which I do.
Right.
So the most important thing that you can do is always stay connected and aware, and always make sure you know Who is watching and taking care of them? What are they doing? Is somebody watching and taking care of the person that's taking care of them? Because not everybody is well. Even the youngest people are not well. And when you're dealing with Native culture, you're dealing with, depending on which part of the country you are in too, it's very, very varied. In the southernmost part of the United States near the border, there's lots of drug issues. So you want to make sure that somebody, that family is taking care of them, one, and is this family member legit? Are they doing the right thing?
Right.
And if these elders are getting any type of stipend from the government, is it protected? Because some of these people get $10,000 a month. And if they're getting that much money, and they're sick, you got to make sure that somebody's protecting their money.
Okay.
And then you got to make sure that if they need a nurse to come to their house, that to get somebody that will come out to them, which it's often hard to get them to come to the reservation, but you can find them. You just got to do the work. You've got to really call. Got to start making the phone calls. Call the churches. The churches in the community right outside the reservation, they have the information for what's going on, to help with what's going on the inside of the reservation. The churches really do.
Okay.
They're the best advocates for people on the res. The churches.
It just, I really, really appreciate you coming on today. And, when our little slogan, real conversations with real people about real situations, I am really appreciative of you just being really transparent with what's going on in the Native American communities on the reservations and some of the challenges that your people are faced with. And I think it just goes to show that we all need to be supporting each other, because I've learned some things from you, even though my background is, that's not my culture, but some of those same belief systems I have. Right. And so it's just good to hear that, and good to know really that although you don't live on the reservation, you still adhere to the beliefs and you know what your responsibility is. Oh, yeah. I think responsibility to family, sometimes that's taken lightly. And and just I'm happy to hear it every time I hear things like this. But it's not easy. I do understand that it's not easy for
family. I know you do. Yeah, I know you do.
Yeah, it's just not easy. So you do the best you can with what you have, and you make do, with everything else. So we're gonna have to catch back up in months to see how things have gone. I want to hear what happens with Reggie's mother and how you all navigate that, how she recovers, and if you've decided it's time to relocate her and to where, whether it's with you or the other brothers. I'd like to hear about that as well. Yeah, so thanks again for giving us a little insight into the Native American culture. And to our viewing audience, I hope you've enjoyed this segment. If you want to learn more, go ahead and post some comments for us in the chat, and we'll answer those. And we will be sure to follow back up with Kim on what's going on in her world. So until next time, we will see you next week on Family Chatter.